it's Caitlin Clark's birthday, so you're going to see a lot of love thrown her way today, of course, as happens on birthdays, including from the WNBA. Remember when it was a thing whether the WNBA was posting about Caitlin Clark or not? They did post this message today, the social media account, happy birthday, Caitlin Clark. Also, her boyfriend said something, but her teammates said something, and that always matters, of course. Here's Aaliyah Boston. My sister, happy birthday, queen. I love you so much. Have the best day ever, wrote Aaliyah. And, AB and Caitlin, the Fever benefited in some ways from being bad, right? Because they got them in back-to-back drafts. And on talent alone, that would be a hell of a foundation. But the fact that they have a bond adds to it. And, they really do have a chance with the strides that Aaliyah has made to form the most dominant duo in the history of the league. Kelsey Mitchell also said something as well. And despite any online narratives, these two tend to show and have shown each other love often. More Life 22, keep going up, kid. Heart, hands, Kelsey Mitchell there. And there's the Fever trio, if you will. And I'm sure plenty more will come in as I record this video and after the video. And of course, happy birthday to Caitlin Clark. I don't know Caitlin personally, but obviously she's had a big impact on what I do. But, her impact on the sport, it's not as if it hasn't been said, right? It's not as if new ground is being broken by reiterating it. But in the moment, it is worth stating that everything that's happened to this point, she's at the center of. And we'll talk about the WNBA schedule in a second, but the WNBA schedule being released amid CBA negotiations. Why was that significant? We know the players are fighting for more from the league and better pay and all those things. But the reason a transformative CBA is even on the table is because of Caitlin Clark. I mean, I could couch it and say in large part because of Caitlin Clark, but you don't have to tap dance around it. She is the catalyst for it. My stock line, you've all probably heard me say it, but the pay us what you owe us shirts could say pay us what you owe her, because no one would be in a position to negotiate the way that the players are negotiating right now if it wasn't for what happened after Caitlin Clark. Now, that's not to say, obligatory mention, it's not to say there weren't great players that came before and there wasn't a lot of hard work that went into building the WNBA. Of course, there were decades of that. And it doesn't mean there wasn't any growth or anything like that otherwise. But the gasoline, the explosion, the supernova was Clark in 2024. And since she came in, there's been this explosive growth. There was explosive growth in the college game, where the game against, the ratings even before the Angel Reese thing were going up. And after that went to a whole nother level. And then South Carolina game, was doing bigger numbers in college football games, just monster attention that carried over into the league. WNBA sees the ratings go through the roof and the attendance go through the roof. New media rights deal comes in, which puts the players in this negotiating position, right? So none of that would be possible without the influence, the impact of Caitlin Clark, which makes her a truly transformative figure. The comparisons have been out there to Tiger Woods or whatnot. Golf was still a thing before Tiger Woods, but it's one of the closest parallels. I've said Michael Jordan, but Bird and Magic came before. Really, it's a once in a lifetime sort of phenomenon. When you talk about what it means for women's basketball, what it means for women's sports, and really for a woman to be so far in front of the zeitgeist where you could be talking about her as the face of basketball. So, there is historical significance to that. Now, her legacy ultimately benefits from the growth of the WNBA, because you don't want to be here fast forward 5 years from now and going like, Caitlin Clark is the reason for the WNBA. Like, it will always be part of the context of the discussion, but I'm sure she would tell you herself, the growth needs to go beyond that. The seeds need to be planted and needs to grow. And we've seen the evidence of that from the ratings going up otherwise, right? The valuations of other franchises going up otherwise. And new stars will form and new stars have been born in this time period. But when the schedule comes out, which I think was a bit of a leverage play from the WNBA, I mean, it was just a logistics thing, but there's a leverage play to it as well, considering Now, if anything is delayed or not on schedule, it looks like the player's fault. You could factor that in. But when you go and say, like, what's the big game on the calendar? If you're a Fever fan, it doesn't matter as long as Caitlin Clark's back on the court. Look at what happened around Team USA basketball. Caitlin Clark was back. It was like, what'd she do? What'd she look like? How'd it go? Did she get out to Paige Beckers on the perimeter? Caitlin Clark, Caitlin Clark, Caitlin Clark. I mean, even when she's not involved, she's the topic of conversation. As Jay-Z once said, eat some breakfast first. So that goes to show you. And when you're looking at the dates on the calendar, as long as Caitlin Clark is playing, as long as the Fever are playing, that's the date fans will circle. If you're rooting for Indiana. If you're the other team, what's the date on the calendar that gets circled? The Fever. When Caitlin Clark comes to town and the venues get moved or whatever. And whether it's Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark to start off the season, or now Paige Beckers and Caitlin Clark to start off the season, there is a bit of a common denominator there. And ultimately, Caitlin Clark just loves hooping and loves ball, and you could tell she's antsy to get back out on the floor. But a lot of the anticipation, one of the reasons the wait has seemed so long is because she was out with injury last year. And now, the WNBA has gotten to a point where Caitlin Clark can be out with injury and people are still caring about the league, even if, Clark's games do the way I always put it when people ask for the receipts, Clark's games are here, Fever games are here, the rest of the league is here, but higher than it was before. And that's part of what I was discussing earlier when you talk about the true impact. It benefits Clark. I know some fans like to say it's all her, only her, blah, 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 but it benefits her long-term if the WNBA remains healthy and continues to grow. That's why they can't halt the momentum. That's why they can't, overplay their leverage, because they need the product on the floor and they need Caitlin Clark back on the floor, because once Caitlin Clark is back on the floor, eventually you could continue to ask for more, and eventually there will be more, because I think on her birthday, it's worth acknowledging once again, her impact was more than probably anybody bargained for.